Hey, it's Will Duffield here. In this video, I want to share with you my quick tips on valuing a property that you're looking to do up, refurbish, and sell on. So for that next flip project you're going to do, how do you work out the value of a property? Of course, if you get that wrong, your whole project is going to be a lot harder to make work. That value is so important to get right. So how do you do it? How do you figure out the value before you even put in that offer on a property that you're going to buy? So first and foremost, I do like sites like Rightmove, Zoopla, Net House Prices, Mouse Price. These sites are free to use and they'll give you sold price data. So you can go onto any one of those sites and you can look at in your area using a postcode search what it is that has sold on the street that you're looking at and within a certain area. So if there's not much coming up on a street, you can look within a quarter mile of that area, and you can search via type of property. So if you're looking at a semi-detached house to buy, then you can search semi-detached houses within a quarter mile of a particular postcode. And that's going to give you really useful information of what has sold in that street. So you can do that typically in a search in the last couple of years, keep it fairly recent, and you can look at house prices that have sold or houses that have sold and figure out what price they went for. So that's a great starting point. It's free to use and it helps you to kind of get a rough idea of what house prices have been going for. It's not, however, the be all and end all. It's just a great starting point. Just bear in mind when you're looking at sold price data that you're looking at the type of property that's selling. So yes, you can filter down by terrace, semi-detached, detached, bungalow, etc. that you're looking for, depending on the type of property you've got in mind. But what you also need to bear in mind is properties are not the same. So you might be looking at a semi-detached ex-council property versus a old Victorian period feature beautiful property, which is very different. So the latter is usually going to sell for more than the former. So bear that in mind when you do your search, that you are comparing like for like. That's very important. But as good as the sold price data is on those portals and it's free to use, it's great information. My favorite one, by the way, is Rightmove, because Rightmove, you can see what you're actually comparing. Because on Rightmove, you can see images of properties that are sold. That's really important. So they're not necessarily every property will have images, but a lot of them will. And you'll be able to see the condition of properties in. So I'm sure you can appreciate if you're looking at a property that sold for 300k, but it needed gutting and a complete refurbishment because it's an absolute mess, then that is a very different proposition to a property that sold at 300k that was immaculate. So you need to understand the condition of the property that sold, not just the price that it sold for. And Rightmove's great for that because you can actually see images of that. So that's a great tip. But with sold price data, it's great. It's a great starting point. But the problem with it is it's often a little bit out of date. So when you're flipping properties like I do, the market changes quickly. There are changes that happen that can really affect your next project. So if you buy a property, renovate it, come to sell it, you're looking at several months realistically of changes in the marketplace. So the market moves quickly, so you need to be aware of what's happening now. And the problem with sold price data, sometimes it's a little bit out of date. So it can take several months for a property to actually go through and be sold before it actually hits the land registry, and therefore it hits these portals, these sold price data portals like the Rightmove, the Mouse Price, Net House Price, etc., Zoopla. Before it hits those sites, there's a delay. And so the problem with that is you're looking at data that could be 6 months old in some cases, and a lot can happen in 6 months. So it's really important that you have an idea of what's happening now, not just what's happened historically. So I personally would not buy a property that I'm going to renovate and flip on for a profit without speaking to agents. So I could do all the analysis, desktop analysis in the world, but I won't buy anything unless I've actually spoken to several different agents, usually 5 agents or more, and I've got their opinions on what they think a property's worth. Because agents will have up-to-date information. In most cases, not necessarily all cases, but they'll have up-to-date information of what properties have sold in a particular area that may not have actually hit land registry, and therefore those prices or that sold price data will not even be on these portals yet. So you get that up-to-date information by speaking to agents and knowing what is happening now in the market. It's really useful information when you actually pick up the phone and speak to agents, because they could tell you, for instance, Yes, there was a property that sold for 300k on that street, but you know what? We're amazed that it sold for 300k and it took ages to sell. It took 6 months to sell, and it was just a really tricky one. Versus, yeah, we put it on the market and it sold 300k in a week. You know, it's a very different proposition. So when you speak to agents and you say what your plan is, look, I'm a property developer. I'm going to be refurbishing a property. I'm going to be bringing it back to you to sell in however many months' time. I'm keen to get an idea of what the resale value would be. Now, a lot of agents will ask you, well, it depends what you do to it. So what standard of finish you're going to be after. So have an idea based on your research when you're looking to flip a property, what kind of standard of refurbishment will you be doing for the property that you're looking at? That's very important. You can spend £5,000 on a kitchen, or you can spend £20,000 on a kitchen. So have an idea of the kind of refurb that you think you need to do. And you understand that from looking at what other developers have done for properties in that area. What kind of spec do you need to achieve to get the best price for your property? So you need to get the best price, but keep the profit margin as high as possible. So you can't overspend in the wrong places. This is the balance of being successful at flipping properties, is spending enough to get the wow factor, so people come in and they're lining up to buy a property, but not overspending to the point where you make no profit because you spent stuff that you didn't need to do. So it's finding that balance that's really important. So make sure that you're speaking to agents as well as looking at desktop research and desktop sold price data, because when you have both, it gives you a really good understanding of what's happening in the market. And of course, you could get very different opinions when you're speaking to agents. You might hear very different figures. Generally, my advice to go conservative with the figures. So if you speak to 5 agents and you get massively different opinions, then what I would personally do is I would keep going and I would speak to another 5 agents until I can get some sort of consistency and an average figure that I can trust. If you're speaking to 5 agents and one gives you an astronomically high figure, then it's generally not the best advice to listen to that, because you need to be conservative when you're flipping property. You need to understand that flipping property is a business. You need to be able to move quickly. So you can refurbish the property, but you need to get it on the market and not just have it sit there for months on end, because time is money, as an opportunity cost if you're not selling a property quickly enough. So you need that property to actually sell quickly. So that means it needs to be well priced, which means you might not necessarily in every single case be breaking ceiling prices for your property. If you're running this as a business and it's efficient, where you're selling properties fairly quickly, so then allow you to move on to the next project, then you need to be realistic on your pricing. So hopefully that's useful. By all means, look at the sold price data. It's really useful to use. It's free to use for anybody. So it's great, but it's also not necessarily going to give you the big picture in every case. So get on to speaking to agents in the local area and getting a feel for what they think a property project is going to be worth as well. And if you do that and you have multiple conversations, you're more likely to be able to actually understand your numbers in advance. So when you offer on a property, you can offer with confidence. You know you're not going to be paying too much for that project. So things get a lot easier, and you know you've locked in your profit when you buy ultimately. So hopefully that's useful. If so, go ahead, like, subscribe, and you will see me again very soon.